At the corporate party, my boss started kissing and groping me while my husband was watching. I'm sharing this story because I can't forget about it, and it keeps coming back. I love my husband so much and I hold him in very high regard. But sometimes having a male friend can sometimes bring some uncertainty and trust issues in a relationship. I'm also not a saint. I have my fair share of flaws, and I have done my husband wrong. I mean, we should have sat down as adults and discussed everything and not act irrational like he did at first. I need advice on what I should do in this situation. How do I deal with this? And please give me tips for future purposes so I won't repeat the same mistake again. So, Quentin, my boyfriend, M, 27, and I, female, 25, met at an ultra music festival that always takes place around March 20-something in Miami. It is a 3-day festival, and I always make sure not to miss it. While my siblings and I always made sure to never miss it, it was like our tradition to always attend an ultra music festival. So, as we were busy dancing and enjoying the music with my siblings, I decided to leave them a little and go to some trailer that was selling food and drinks. When I got there, I ordered my food since I was somehow hungry, and as I was about to pay, a handsome random guy came up. He greeted us, me and the food seller, and said that he was going to pay for both my order and his. At first, I found that really weird and unsettling because in my world, we no longer had good Samaritans. So, I wondered what the guy had wanted because we didn't even know each other. I thanked him for the kind gesture, and we continued chatting for a while. He was actually a very fun and sophisticated guy. Besides his charming and handsome self, he was what we call the IT guy. His blue hazel eyes were very hypnotizing. He was also a very sweet person and good company. We hung around for like an hour or two until one of my siblings approached us and told me that we had to go since it was getting pretty late. So, Quentin and I exchanged numbers and promised each other that we would continue to chat over the phone. 3 days later, I received his call asking to meet up with him since he was around Coconut Grove where I was staying. I agreed to the meetup, and we met at a local cafe that was not far from my home. We spent a lot of time chatting about our goals and objectives. It was really fun and a breath of fresh air to spend some time with him. I loved the fact that he was the guy with ambition and consistency to reach his goal in the entertainment industry, since he was a filming producer. We had a lot in common, since I was also an aspiring actress. I was glad to find someone like him who would guide me, coach me, and help me build my acting career. That is what I had thought when I got into a relationship with him. Little did I know that I was getting myself into a trap. There were red flags that I had noticed about him, but the way he was smooth with words, the way he knew how to make a lady melt and happy without even trying hard, made me put all that aside and focus on the present. Quentin and I started dating after going on a couple of dates, but more like we made our relationship official 3 months after we became friends. Our relationship was bliss at first. I was the happiest woman on earth. I had told him about my aspiring acting career and that I had dreams of becoming one of the best actresses in Hollywood someday. He was very supportive. He even told me that he would introduce me to one of his good friends who was in the acting industry. Well, he was his fitness coach and an acting coach. I was glad that he was considering my dreams, and he was willing to help me get into a stepping ladder. A few days later, Quentin took me to his friend's house and introduced me. Well, it was more like a surprise to me because he didn't even tell me that his coach was Alex Fraser, male, 29. I was a big fan of his fiancée, Jessica, female, 25. She was living the life that I wanted to live. She was a true inspiration. Their relationship was what some of us only see on TV. It was so perfect. But social media life and real life are not the same, though. I learned that later. Alex was to become my acting trainer. Mind you, at that time, he was the boss. I was going to join his classes that took place 3 days a week, and the extra 2 days were for training. I was happy with the changes that were happening in my life. The path that my career was taking was the path that I had always wished for, and my husband, or must I say ex-husband, made everything easier for me. My classes with Alex were going to open so many doors for me. I have seen his phenomenal work before. Most of his students make it in the acting industry, and I had that hope that I would also make it. Weeks later, I started classes with Alex. Mind you, I had gone to an acting school and learned the basics, but what Alex taught me was somehow new information that I didn't even know or learn at school. Alex was, or is known for his charisma and ability to bring out the best in his students. So, being one of his students made me feel like I had achieved everything in life. He ran a very successful and well-known acting agency in Miami, name withheld due to personal reasons. Quentin was working as a film and music producer to one of the aspiring entertainment and filming companies in Pinehurst, Florida, Miami. So, I had moved in with Quentin after we dated for 5 months. Well, the reason why I had moved in with him was because I wanted to be closer to him. I mean, he was more like my oxygen, and I couldn't live without him. Our relationship was more like an obsessive relationship. It was kind of toxic, but we enjoyed it like that. I don't know, maybe I was too much within his grip and blinded by love, but I didn't find anything wrong with how our relationship was toxic. I kept attending my classes and training sessions with Alex. At that time, we were going to be shooting a short video that would help us in the future in our acting career. Alex's words, not mine. Meanwhile, Quentin had advised me not to spend my time with Alex because I had started coming back to the apartment late, especially during training days. So, Quentin didn't like that. Quentin was a very insecure and jealous person. So when I spent more time at the studio with Alex, he would get angry and start being delusional. As my professional relationship with Alex progressed, our bond grew stronger. We would spend countless hours together at the studio working on routines, scripts, scenes, and discussing strategies for competitions. Alex's charisma and charm made me somehow feel special and valued. So, Alex was a charismatic and charming coach who seemed to have all the right advice to propel my career forward. He believed in me, which was one thing that Quentin suddenly changed from. Quentin was no longer the supportive husband. He never really asked me about my classes and training. All he cared about was himself and how big his name was going to be with the movie that they were filming and how much money he had spent to get the big shot like Samuel L. Jackson to be one of the leading stars. While Alex was pushing me to be the best in acting, little did I know that beneath his charming exterior, Quentin was a narcissist who would stop at nothing to control and manipulate me. He had shown me signs before, but I had never taken them seriously because I thought it was just a passing thing and work pressure. But the manipulation and controlling behavior kept getting worse, especially when I would come back late when training took longer time. Quentin's narcissistic tendencies became more apparent as he sought to control and dominate my life. He would undermine me in the presence of other uprising actresses, making me doubt my abilities and isolating me from my teammates. Yes, he knew everything I was doing during classes and training sessions. He even knew about my projects that Alex would give us to work on, but he never really asked me about anything. I felt trapped, unable to escape the clutches of my narcissistic boyfriend. One night, after a particularly grueling training session, I found myself seeking solace in Alex's arms. We spent the night together, and for a brief moment, I believed that my dreams were finally within reach. However, as days turned into weeks, I realized that my relationship with Quentin had taken a dark turn. He became someone I wouldn't recognize and didn't know. As the evening progressed, the line between our professional and personal relationship became blurred. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions and gave in to the allure of the moment, spending the night with Alex. The next morning, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. I woke up with a sense of guilt and confusion, realizing the consequences of my impulsive decision. However, the aftermath of that night was far worse than I could have anticipated. My mind kept ringing Quentin's name and reminded myself that if he was to find out, hell would break loose, and it would jeopardize my relationship and my marriage with Quentin. But I didn't do anything with Alex, so it was not supposed to be a big deal, right? About a week later, Quentin went to New York for his film shooting. Mind you, he told me that the day before, well, more like the night before, I didn't know who Quentin was anymore. He had changed to be this dark person with a dark aura. I tried addressing the issue that we were facing with him, but he just told me that he was fine. He was just dealing with work and told me how high the pressure was for him. He promised me that he would get back to his original self and make it up to me when they are done filming the movie. The tension was too thick at the house to a point that it even affected our intimate moments. Quentin was no longer the romantic Quentin. He was focused on what he was doing. And what would break my heart more was the fact that he wouldn't, or rather, wouldn't want to at least show up and show me support when we did training or shooting short scenes that would be involved on our acting resumes. One night, I was alone in the house, all bored and missing Quentin a lot. As I was busy scrolling down my social media feeds when I received a text message from Alex. It was really surprising because our classes were going to continue the upcoming Monday. He was actually telling me there were important parts of the scene that we should look through before Monday. So he suggested that I come over to his house so that we could go through them together. Because I loved what I did and I trusted Alex, I agreed to come over to his house. In my head, I was telling myself that nothing was going to happen, and the guy had a fiancée, so I was safe. Little did I know that when I got there, the fiancée was not present. Alex told me that she had gone home since there was a crisis that needed her attention. So, we went through the scenes. We would also take short breaks and speak about our lives in general and our relationship fears. I ended up opening up about my relationship problems. Alex was a very good listener and a good advisor. So I didn't think confiding in him about what I was facing in my relationship with Quentin would actually cost me a lot. However, as the days passed, I noticed a gradual change in my professional life. Projects I had been working on with Alex diligently started to fall apart. Important emails went unanswered, and my reputation began to suffer. I got confused and distraught. I couldn't understand why my once promising career was spiraling downward. A few days later, Quentin got back from New York. Mind you, he had gone for the whole month, and during that month, he had only called me a few times to check up on me. I had even thought that he was having an affair outside our relationship. I didn't know how to explain his sudden behavior and control freak tendencies. So, one day he came back fuming. I was confused by why he was angry. I wondered what had happened at work. Little did I know that the guy that I love was actually angry at me. I imagined the problem. I tried speaking to him, but he kept asking about what he said to me and asked if he had ever told me that I shouldn't spend more time with Alex and why I was spending the night at his house. I was shocked by his revelation. I didn't know what to say. My tongue just got tied for some reason. So, Quentin, fueled by his own ego and desire for control, started sabotaging my every move. So, one day we got invited to join the party that was hosted by my boss, Alex, because his agency had won an award in the category of the best agency of the year. So, I went to the party with Quentin, even though he wasn't very happy. I don't know what his problem was, but I pushed it aside because I wanted to enjoy the party. The night began with a sense of anticipation. My husband and I arrived at the grand hall, the sounds of laughter and music spilling out into the night. The hall itself was a testament to opulence, with high ceilings and ornate decorations that seemed to sparkle under the chandelier glow. We were greeted warmly by colleagues, and I introduced my husband to those he hadn't met before. I felt a mix of pride and nervousness. It was important for me to make a good impression, both for my career and to show my husband the world I was part of. As we moved through the crowd, I noticed my boss, Mr. Thompson, a charismatic man in his late 40s, making his rounds. He caught my eye and smiled, raising his glass in a casual salute. We exchanged polite greetings, and I introduced him to my husband because I was told to never act casually with my boss, because it would raise questions to some actors and actresses. "This is my husband, Quentin," I said, smiling. "Ah, Quentin," Mr. Fraser said, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you. You must be very proud of your wife," he added. "Absolutely," Quentin replied, shaking his hand firmly. "She speaks highly of you and her work here," Mr. Fraser chuckled. "Well, she's one of our best. Enjoy the party, both of you." As the evening wore on, the initial excitement began to wane. I found myself frequently checking on Quentin, hoping he was enjoying himself. He seemed to be making small talk with my colleagues, but I could sense he was slightly out of place. I hoped the party would help bridge that gap. The first hint of trouble came subtly as I stood talking to a group of coworkers. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Turning, I saw Mr. Fraser. He smiled warmly, but his hand lingered longer than necessary. "You look lovely tonight," he said, his voice low. "Thank you," I replied, stepping slightly away to create some distance. "It's a beautiful event," he said, not seeming to notice my discomfort or chose to ignore it. Throughout the evening, he found reasons to stand close, touch my arm, or compliment me. Each time, I tried to politely deflect his attention, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Quentin noticed too. He caught my eye from across the room, his expression questioning. I tried to reassure him with a smile, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He began to stay closer to me, subtly positioning himself between Mr. Fraser and me whenever he could. It happened near the end of the night. The crowd had thinned, with many colleagues already having left or lost in their revelry. I was at the bar getting a drink of water to clear my head when Mr. Fraser approached again. This time, his demeanor was more insistent. "Are you having a good time?" he asked, stepping closer than ever. "Yes, thank you," I replied, looking around for Quentin. Before I could react, he leaned in, his hands gripping my waist. "You know, I've always admired you," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. I froze, my heart racing. "Mr. Fraser, this is not appropriate," I managed to say, trying to push him away. But he was insistent, his grip tightening. "Come on, just a little fun," he said, his lips brushing against my neck. At that moment, I saw Quentin approaching, his eyes wide with disbelief and anger. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Mr. Fraser released me, stepping back with a smirk. "Just a misunderstanding," he said casually. Quentin stepped between us, his fists clenched. "Let's go," he said to me, his voice tight with controlled rage. The scene had drawn the attention of a few remaining partygoers. Whispers spread quickly as Quentin guided me towards the exit, his arm protectively around my shoulders. My heart was pounding, my mind racing with a mix of fear and humiliation. Outside, the cool night air was a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. Quentin turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softening with concern. I nodded, though I felt far from okay. "Let's just go home," I said, my voice trembling. In the car, silence enveloped us. I could see the tension in Quentin's posture, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. I wanted to say something to break the silence, but I couldn't find the words. The reality of what had just happened was sinking in, and I felt a wave of nausea. The drive home felt interminable. Quentin's jaw was clenched, and I could sense the anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. I kept replaying the incident in my mind, questioning every moment. Could I have done something differently? Should I have been more forceful in my rejection? The self-doubt was consuming. When we finally arrived home, Quentin turned off the engine but didn't move. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had happened hanging heavily between us. "Why didn't you tell me he was like that?" Quentin finally asked, his voice a mixture of hurt and anger. "I didn't know, Quentin. He's your friend. You were supposed to know everything about him," I said quietly. "He's always been friendly, but I never thought he would cross that line. That night, I'm even thinking of that night that we once spent together with Alex." Quentin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We need to do something about this. You can't go back to work and pretend like nothing happened." "I know," I replied, feeling a sense of dread, "but I don't know what to do. Reporting him could cost me my job." "We'll figure it out," Quentin said firmly. "But you're not alone in this. We'll get through it together." Returning to work after the incident was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. The office, usually a place where I felt confident and capable, now felt like a minefield. Every glance from a colleague felt scrutinizing. Every interaction with Mr. Fraser laced with an undercurrent of tension. I tried to keep my head down and focus on my work, but it was impossible to ignore the whispers. People had seen what happened, or at least parts of it, and the rumor mill was in full swing. Some colleagues were sympathetic, offering quiet words of support, while others seemed to avoid me altogether, perhaps out of fear of being associated with the drama. Mr. Fraser, for his part, acted as though nothing had happened. He was cool and professional, his behavior so composed that it made me question my own experience. Was it all in my head? Had I overreacted? But I knew the truth, and so did Quentin. Together, we decided to take action. I scheduled a meeting with HR, my hands shaking as I typed out the email. This was the first step in what I knew would be a long and difficult process, but I couldn't stay silent. The incident had a profound impact on my marriage. Quentin and I had always had a strong relationship built on mutual respect and trust, but this event tested us in ways we hadn't anticipated. Quentin was angry, not just at Mr. Fraser, Alex, but at the situation, at the power dynamics that had left me vulnerable. We talked late into the night, dissecting every detail. Quentin wanted to protect me, to ensure that something like this could never happen again. I appreciated his support, but I also felt a sense of guilt. I had always prided myself on being able to handle my professional life independently, and now I felt like I had let him down. So, Quentin became distant and would sometimes not come back home. I didn't know if the reason why his behavior had changed towards me was because of me wanting to pursue my acting career, or because he had his own things that he was not telling. But I had put that aside because I trusted my husband, and I knew that he wouldn't do me dirty or do something that would destroy and jeopardize what we were trying to build. He loved me too much to put our relationship in jeopardy. But instead, I was the one who had put our relationship and marriage in the state where it is now. I wonder what really came over me, I thought. One sunny weekend, Quentin came back home in the afternoon. Mind you, he had been gone for 3 days after that incident at work without even bothering to call me. I asked where he was coming from. The answer I got was, "I'm trying to pursue my career also, since you don't want us to start a family." That response shook me because I didn't expect it from him. He was slowly going back to being his old short-tempered self. I wondered what had driven him back to that state that we had worked so hard to conquer, but I just let it slide and hoped that he would tell me when he was ready. The weeks that followed were filled with tension. Every day at work was a struggle, and every evening at home was dominated by discussions about the incident. We argued more than we ever had before, each of us dealing with our own version of the trauma. But we also grew closer. Quentin's unwavering support was a source of strength, and together, we began to rebuild. We sought counseling, both individually and as a couple, to help navigate the complex emotions we were experiencing. Slowly, we started to heal. My husband and I had a very heated argument about the fact that I wanted to wait for a year to start a family or have kids. That day, he lashed out on me to a point that he even told me that he had thought I was different from his ex-girlfriend, and he had thought I knew what I wanted when I first got into a relationship with him and agreed to marry him. He even asked if I was cheating on him with Alex since I was always with him, even after what happened at the party. After that heated argument, he went out, to only God knows where. I was so heartbroken by what he said. His words were stuck in my head to a point that I found myself calling Alex and asked to spend the night with him as friends, of course, of which he agreed. I know it was a wrong move to make, but I needed someone to vent to. I was in mixed emotions. I didn't know what to do with myself. My other side was angry at Quentin for comparing me with his ex, and his words were like a deep stab in my heart. I was also frustrated at the fact that he didn't understand my reasons for why I wanted to pursue my career first before having any children. So, that night, as I went to Alex's flat, he automatically knew what I had needed, and that was alcohol. We drank. I wanted to numb the pain I was feeling inside my heart and forget everything that Quentin had said earlier on. So, drinking like a fish was the only option I had. Alex decided to offer me a weed joint that we smoked together, and it did make a trick because most of the things I did or said there, I don't really remember. So, we smoked and drank. I was having the best time of my life with the person who was my boss. As we were having fun, I felt a sense of peace and belonging, and one thing led to another. I remember kissing Alex. The music he was playing made me miss the intimate sessions I would have with my husband, which somehow changed from fire to ice ever since he wanted to start expanding the family and I didn't agree. His intimacy game dropped to the ground, and I was suffering. You know, the weed was in my head, the alcohol fully in my system. As we were kissing with Alex, things got heated to a point that clothes started flying, and we couldn't hold ourselves, so we did the deed, meaning we were spending the night together for the second time. The next morning came, and regret came crashing over me. I realized what I had done and left Alex's house like I was chased by dogs. I was scared that Quentin would find out, and what I did somehow made me think that what he said when he compared me to his ex-girlfriend was somehow true, and it did eat me up. I didn't know what to do with myself. I wished to just go to the ocean or to the river, so I can wash away the sin that I had committed. I realized that I had put my marriage in jeopardy all because I couldn't give my husband what he wanted and ended up finding solace in drugs that led me to be unfaithful to my husband. Days later, Quentin had been home and he apologized for how he behaved and told me that he didn't mean to compare me to his ex, but he was under pressure because he really wanted to have children and build his own family since he doesn't have one. I understood his reasoning, but the guilt was there. You know, I mean how you tell your husband that you have cheated? I prayed that Alex wouldn't say anything or do anything stupid that would make Quentin find out about my abomination and shame that I had done. Little did I know that the bastard had captured every moment of that night. So about a week later, I received an email, which was very odd because all communications are done technologically nowadays. So I took the mail, wanting to find out what it was. Maybe it would have been my parents finally reaching out, not knowing that it was a very big and destructive bomb. As I opened the mail, I found the letter written the night I would never forget. I hope we do it again soon. And it was from Alex. I got the shock of my life as to why would Alex do this to me? My heart was beating too fast. Thoughts were running through my head. I was asking myself, what if Quentin was the one who got the mail and he saw the pictures and a letter that Alex had sent? I sent Alex a text right away and broke everything off with him. I wanted nothing to do with him because he had started acting like a psycho. As I was busy lost in my thoughts, I heard the car door opening, and I knew that it was Quentin. So I took the mail along with everything that Alex had put in the mail and threw it in a trash can. When Quentin came in, he found me drinking wine like I was drinking water, and he knew that if I drank wine like that, I would either be under pressure or something was bothering me. That time, I had forgotten that it was the day that Quentin would take out the trash. I was in so much stress. I told Quentin that it was nothing to worry about, and I left him there in the kitchen and went to the bedroom. My mind came back later that it was the day that Quentin had to take out the trash. I rushed to the kitchen and found out that the trash can was empty. I looked for Quentin and found him in the sitting room looking at the pictures that Kristen had sent, and the letter was beside him. I knew there, and then that I was in deep asterisk T. I knew that my marriage was over. Quentin couldn't even look me in the eyes. He was furious, and I knew what was going to come next. When he was like that, his eyes were full of rage, hatred, and hurt. I had hurt my husband and destroyed my marriage in the most humiliating way. I hated myself and still do hate myself for that, but I had to try and explain why I had done what I did and apologize. So the next day, when I had seen that he was no longer enraged like he was the previous night, I asked to speak to him. I was glad that as much as his tempers kept coming back, he was not violent, well, at least towards me. I tried making him understand that I didn't do what I did on purpose, and it wasn't my intention to destroy what we had. Instead of listening to me, he went to our bedroom and took out all my clothes. I knew the words he wanted to say already, so I decided to not fight him but apologize and give him some space with the hope that he would calm down and let us fix things. I mean, we were both wrong, yes. He didn't cheat on me, or at least I didn't know or had the evidence that he was really not cheating on me. But we were both wrong, and we had to come to terms with our mistakes and fix them like a married couple, you know? I love my husband a lot, and being away from him made me realize how naive and careless I was to do what I did to him. The incident forced me to confront not just my own experience but the broader issue of workplace harassment. I realized that what had happened to me was not an isolated incident. Stories from other colleagues, whispered in confidence, painted a picture of a toxic culture that had been allowed to flourish unchecked. I began to educate myself on workplace harassment, learning about the legal protections available and the steps that could be taken to create a safer environment. I joined a support group for survivors of workplace harassment, finding solidarity and strength in the shared experiences of others. This journey was empowering. It transformed my sense of helplessness into a determination to make a difference. I became an advocate for change, speaking out about my experience and pushing for policies that would protect others. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. Through perseverance and resilience, I rose above all the challenges and setbacks, becoming a symbol of strength for others who had experienced similar toxic relationships. I expanded my social media platform to raise awareness about narcissistic abuse and the importance of self-love and empowerment. I did not only triumph in my acting career but also in my personal life. I learned valuable lessons about the power of self-belief, surrounding myself with positive influences, and never compromising my dreams for anyone. Over time, I regained my passion for acting and flourished as an actress. I went on to achieve remarkable success, proving to myself and the world that I was capable of greatness. Through my journey, I became an advocate for recognizing and addressing toxic relationships in the entertainment community. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my career from the ground up. I surrounded myself with positive influences and focused on my own personal and professional development. Through hard work and perseverance, I emerged stronger than ever, proving to myself that Quentin had posted a lot about me, demonizing my reputation and opportunities. I realized that I had to take drastic measures to protect my career and my sanity. I gathered evidence of Alex's sabotage and reported him to the acting agency company where he worked. Imagine reporting a whole boss. Alex was eventually fired, and I was able to rebuild my career without his interference. I learned the valuable lesson that true success comes from within and that it is important to surround oneself with positive and supportive people. To me, my story serves as a reminder that toxic relationships can have far-reaching consequences. It highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing narcissistic behavior early on and the courage it takes to break free from such destructive dynamics. Ultimately, my journey of self-discovery and resilience became the catalyst for my success as I learned to trust in my own abilities and create a brighter future for myself. Even though my heart still yearns for Quentin's love and touches, I knew that I had to choose myself and my career first, and I had to get out of the toxic relationship before it was too late. I know my heart should be hating Quentin for sabotaging my career and my reputation, but it still loves him. Am I wrong for wanting to get back with him and try and help him overcome his narcissistic behavior, because if it goes untreated and unspoken, it would become worse, and he would do it to someone else? Please advise me, what should I do?